issues getting sorted out. We'll give folks just another minute to join us, and then we'll kick off our program for today. And good morning. Thanks so much for adding all of your info into the chat. Please keep that coming. Great to see all of you joining us this morning, and from so many different places around the state and from so many different program settings. That's exactly what we had hoped for. Okay, so welcome to day 2 of the Supervision Summit, What It Takes, Supervising Peer Support Specialists and Advocates. Many of you may be joining for the second time and were with us last week. And for those of you who are new to the summit and just joining for the first time, we're so happy that you're here. So we want to welcome everyone to today's summit. And I just wanted to start off by saying that the collaboration between Rutgers University and NYU to develop PeerTAC has been a truly remarkable one. In just 18 months, the teams that have been led by Rita Cronice and Yvette Kelly have created an online hub. We hope you check that one out. A multitude of products, several live training webinars, a really vibrant learning collaborative, and technical assistance to agencies across the state for the implementation of peer support services across the lifespan. Through partnerships with strategic and community partners, PeerTAC has promoted organizational and individual youth, family, and adult peer support services to different providers across New York State, truly embodying the mission that New York State OMH had for this initiative. OMH has provided critical leadership that we are really grateful for, and many thanks to the PeerTAC Advisory Council, the Alliance for Rights and Recovery, the Center for Practice Innovations, Families Together in New York State, the NYC Justice Peer Initiative, the Wellness Collaborative New York Independent Practice Association, and dozens of subject matter experts that work closely with our team for your collaboration. Our summit program and PeerTAC website both contain links to resources to those companion organizations, groups, and can offer additional resources to supervisors of peer support specialists and advocates across the state. PeerTAC's vision is to ensure behavioral health organizations of all types can benefit from the hope and a sense of healing peer support workers bring to others who have experienced adversity due to mental health challenges, regardless of age, race, socioeconomic status, stigma, or other factors that can limit the success of mental health services, and also have the option to receive peer support services. Like you all, I am passionate about the value of supervision for all members of the behavioral health workforce. Today's summit spotlights the critical importance of supervision. The featured keynotes and workshop presenters all walk the walk, dedicating their efforts, expertise, and lived experiences to today's topics. To the presenters, we thank you for sharing those experiences with us. And on behalf of our entire team, I hope that everyone enjoys their time with us today and leaves with a renewed passion for effective supervision and peer support across the lifespan. I'd like to turn the welcoming over to Deputy Executive Director Andy Kleek, who will take us through the next part of our morning.
Thank you so much, Amy. As Amy mentioned, my name is Andy Kleek, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director at NYU's McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research, where I oversee all our technical assistance activities. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to welcome everybody to the Supervision Summit. I'd like to welcome back those of you who were here last week, and I know that there's a lot of you who were here last week, which is really exciting. To come on 2 consecutive Fridays in a row really speaks to the importance of the work that you're doing, and also the importance of the topic today. And I'd also like to welcome those who are here for their first day. Last week was a huge success, and we're hoping that all of you who are here for today not only take advantage of today and find it as equally as successful, but also make sure to take advantage of the recording from last week as well when it's available. I would like to thank our partners, the Rutgers Academy of Peer Services, Amy alluded to our partnership with them, and it has truly been fantastic. And our partner in this effort, Families Together in New York State, and particularly Rita and Yvette for leading PeerTAC through the first 18 months and taking it from an idea to a fully formed center that can offer support to adult, youth, and family peers and provide our organizations and achieve OMH's vision of integrating peer services throughout the mental health system. We're grateful to OMH for providing the vision and leadership to make this endeavor possible, and to our advisory council and the dozens of content experts who have contributed to the effort, especially those of you who are presenting at the summit today and presented last week. We're so excited to present this Supervision Summit. We're focusing on supervision because we believe that supervision is the foundation of all the work that we do. With it, providers can thrive and effectively work with individuals and families to meet their goals. Organizational leadership also plays a key role in setting an example, creating a culture that's respectful, and providing frontline supervisors with the tools and resources that they need to support their staff. I hope you find the day practical, informative, and inspirational. We're especially hoping that you can bring back the techniques and tools that you learned today back to your organization. Have a wonderful day. And with that, I will pass it back to Rita.
And I will punt over to Amanda.
Good morning. Wow. So those were tough acts to follow with your opening remarks. And my name is Amanda Sake. I am the Chief Advocacy Officer, and I oversee the Office of Advocacy and Peer Support Services at OMH. I'm a person with lived experience in mental health, experienced trauma in service settings, and has lived experience. And I love the job that I'm in, and because it places and the work that my team does at OMH, because as a result of advocacy all the way back in the 90s, from the community, individuals and families, to establish an office within OMH to ensure that the voice and choice of individuals and families served is represented in OMH leadership and policy and program development. And it is an honor to serve in that role, and it's an honor to serve with my amazing team. So Rita asked if I could share a little bit about the vision of PeerTAC and the Peer Advancement Network. So I will, just kind of level set there. And as the demand for peer-delivered services grows and grows, and believe me, it's growing as a direct result of the amazing work that peer workers across the lifespan and families do. And more mental health agencies, looking at you all, are looking to hire peer workers to work in programs and services. Many of the agencies may not have peer leadership or leadership trained in peer values yet within their organization, who can create and design an ongoing infrastructure that can support the successful inclusion of peer workers and the successful inclusion of peer support services. And without this critical infrastructure in place in your agencies, the outcomes typically include turnover, lack of clarity and vision regarding the role of peer workers and how best to utilize their skills and expertise. Additionally, there is an incredible need for supervisors that are not equipped with the knowledge of peer values and best practice skills and training to supervise peer workers effectively within the parameters of the peer support discipline. And in order to actualize OMH's vision to implement career ladders for peer workers, supervisors, team leaders, managers, directors, coordinators, members of executive team, we all need to work together to make that happen. And good news, you're here today, and that is a very strong signal to me that you're investing the time and resources to help us at OMH in our vision. And on behalf of OMH, I thank you. I've worked in the field for 20 years now, and I know your days are busy, particularly Fridays, and you work so hard for the individuals and families you serve. So I thank you. And if this is your first time at PeerTAC, I think Andy and Amy kind of definitely went over the definition of PeerTAC. And I want to talk about the goals that OMH has for PeerTAC to enhance the adoption and implementation of a full array of peer services across the behavioral health care system for children, adolescents, youth, family, adults, and older adults. I want them to increase capacity for organizations to provide peer support services in accordance with established peer discipline best practices. There were clearly defined scope of practice, peer support staff job descriptions, and recruitment strategies. Maintain the fidelity of peer support values through enhanced competency-based training and ongoing learning for all providers. Finally, to increase the retention and job satisfaction of peer support staff and supervisors through quality, peer-informed, or led supervision. I also want to take a few minutes to promote another exciting resource OMH supports, which is the New York Peer Advancement Network, or NYPAN. NYPAN is a companion initiative to PeerTAC that has been featured throughout the summit. And our main goals for this initiative include, and were designed, NYPAN was designed to be a centralized, consistent statewide entity that provides leadership, support, and direction around the growth and advancement in their field. OMH recognizes the fact that this network is essential to ensuring the future professional growth and meaningful inclusion of peer specialists and advocates throughout our system. It serves as a centralized entity that provides leadership and support, ensuring the integrity of the peer specialist disciplines remain intact while demonstrating and reinforcing fidelity to core values and best practices. And the network is also responsible for promoting peer workforce opportunities, including opportunities in underserved and marginalized communities to better promote equity and diversity in the peer workforce. And they work in very close collaboration with similar entities that promote and support the youth and family peer advocates and the certified recovery peer advocates that will assist in existing efforts and underway to build the infrastructure for peer career ladders throughout our system, including support for peer specialists and advocates to move into supervisory and leadership roles as discipline experts. So please check them out. Hopefully someone put it in chat. Thank you so much for everything you do. I hope you have a fantastic day. Please let us know how we can leverage our resources to best support the work you do with peoples and families we serve.
Thank you so much, Amanda. We are so honored to have you here, and we're really just, it's been an amazing partnership to work with you. We thank you for your vision to bring PeerTAC into, and to allow us to bring PeerTAC into reality. I'm Rita Cronice, and I'm one of the two co-directors for PeerTAC. And we just really wanted to take a few short moments to answer some of the most frequently asked questions that pop up. So hopefully you won't have to ask them too many more times throughout the session. But one of the questions that comes up almost every time we have one of these presentations or webinars or live, online sessions is, will the session be recorded? Will the slides be available? And the answer is yes, with a qualified yes. We won't be recording any of the breakout sessions, and we also won't be recording if a particular presenter asks us not to record. But for all of the sessions that are recorded that we can make publicly available, those will be available within 30 days on a new page that's being constructed right now on our PeerTAC website. And with that, I'd like to hand over to my co-director, Beth Kelly.
Thank you, Rita, and thank you, Amanda, Andy, and my apologies, it's a Friday morning. Amy. And thank you so much for just the kind words that you offered this morning. We are very excited to have everyone here for the Supervision Summit. We're looking forward to a great day. And so just wanted to offer that. I'm Beth Kelly, again, one of the co-directors of PeerTAC. And so again, as Rita mentioned, here are a couple of the questions that we get that we just wanted to let folks know. So can you get continuing education credits for this event? Yes, all summit keynotes, forums, and workshops are eligible for CE credit. Sessions are approved for CPRPs, LMSWs, LCSWs, LMHCs, and New York State peer certification. The keynotes will be eligible for 1 CE hour, while the forums and workshops are eligible for 1.25 CE hours. To receive a certificate of attendance that can be submitted for CE credit, you must be registered for either one or both days of the summit, attend the full keynote or workshop for which you're seeking CE credit, and complete a workshop evaluation within 48 hours for each session you attend. If you attend by phone, we cannot verify your attendance. So if you want CE credit, be sure to access the sessions using your email address from the internet.
Thank you, Yvette. I also wanted to mention that many of the answers to the questions that we'll be covering now are also available in the program. So if you look on pages 19 and 20 of the program, so much of this information is right there. So we won't be reiterating it, and we'll just really direct you to the program for that. However, during the keynote presentation sessions, all of you will be on mute and off camera and won't have direct access to us other than in the chat. So to ask questions during the session, just use the chat box. Let us know everything that's going on. And Angelique just mentioned that you can feel free to turn on closed captioning at any time if you need to, and that's on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And we have some amazing moderators that are assisting us, and a terrific tech team behind the scenes. If you ask questions in the chat, you should be getting an answer back from one of the moderators shortly in the chat. So you can use the chat throughout the sessions.
Yeah, and just to say, so one of the other questions that we have is, can you save the chat? And so yes, you're able to download the chat during the end or during the session to take advantage of the things that have been shared by other participants during the session. So please feel free to do that if you find that would be helpful.
And where can you learn more about the presenters? Go take a look at the program. You'll see biographies as well as the workshop descriptions there. Well, not the biographies, sorry, the biographies are on a web page, so you can get to the web page through the program, so you can learn more about the presenters there.
Excellent. And so we're also going to be hosting regional and state representatives, a meet and greet over lunch. So we're fortunate to have representatives from the OMH Office of Advocacy and Peer Support Services, as well as representatives from the Wellness Collaborative, New York Independent Practice Association, Alliance for Rights and Recovery, and NAPS-NIPAN, as well as Families Together in New York State. They will be in breakout rooms by region, so you can meet your regional representatives from these organizations, or you can join a statewide breakout to meet representatives that support you at the state level. The meet and greet will start at 12:15 and run to 12:45. So you'll still have time for a short break before the afternoon session. And we do encourage you all to join and take advantage of that opportunity to meet with your representatives and ask questions or just get to know them a little better.
Thanks, Yvette. And one little detail about the meet and greet, it's not available for continuing education, but it is a great opportunity to get to know and learn more about each of your regional and state representatives. Now, just a little bit, there is a book that's associated with the conference, with the summit. 4 of us who are very deeply involved in the conference co-edited the book. It's a fundraiser where all proceeds from the book go to the National Association of Peer Supporters. And we will be raffling off 5 copies of the book for people that have registered for the session. So if you come to the wrap-up session, you'll see if you won. If not, we'll give you more information about how to access the book.
Thank you. And so how do you learn more about PeerTAC? So if you've not done so already, we're going to ask that you please sign up for our listserv. You will receive our biweekly newsletter and other announcements of interest to the community of organizations that have peer support services. We're going to post the link in the chat. So again, feel free to connect with us on our website, peertac.org.
Terrific. So how do you get to the next session? In your program, there are separate Zoom links for each one of the keynotes and workshop sessions. So you'll just click on that when you're ready to go. In this case, for the keynote, you won't have to leave. We're going to be going right into the keynote following a short presentation by Liz Breyer. And then from Liz, it will go directly to Peggy. So you won't have to jump out and come back in. You can just stay for this session. At the end of Peggy's session, then you will go to your program and go into the next, whatever the next workshop is that you'd like to go to. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Liz Breyer, Director of the Downstate Bureau of Regional Advocacy and Peer Support Services. And she'll tell us a little bit more about, she'll talk a little bit about workplace wellness and introduce us to our keynote. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much, Rita. I'm looking at the time and I think I might have to shift gears a little bit to make sure that I fit into the schedule. But first, good morning, everyone. Welcome back for those of you who are here for the second day. My name is Liz Breyer. I am the Downstate Director working with the Office of Advocacy and Peer Support Services with the Office of Mental Health. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I really rely on as, you know, as we all spend so much of our days at work. Having and being able to incorporate workplace wellness, I think, is such an essential aspect of us being able to do this work. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So something I didn't know, coming out, you know, post-pandemic, I was doing a little research and, you know, Forbes is always good for some interesting data. I hadn't realized that the shift that had happened post-pandemic in the general, back to the other slide, in the general workforce was being called the Great Resignation, which is a really powerful and strong statement to be making about the shift that had happened. I know even for myself, and I hadn't realized how many people left their jobs since April of 2021. And this is actually a year old, so this might even be a higher number, but 15 million people. And what they were saying is that for many, priorities changed around work. And people became much more focused, as would make sense, on that work-life balance and that mental well-being. For me, this is really important because I'm an individual also with lived experience. I have someone with an extensive trauma history. And because of that history, sort of a disconnect between mind and body wellness. You know, I have to work a little bit harder to make sure that I'm in touch, that I'm grounded, that I'm taking care of myself, because I can go for very long periods of time not realizing that I'm not okay. And so workplace wellness really means a lot to me because of that. There are things that I need to do during the day that allow me to do this work, to do it well, but also most importantly, to take care of myself, because I shifted in my own mind, like many people, and started to prioritize meaningful work. It's one of the reasons why I actually came back to the Office of Mental Health. I wanted it to mean something. I wanted my work to have a purpose. And I think that a lot of people found themselves in that place, hence this title. Next slide, please. I find this to be a very powerful, I don't know, meme picture. I don't know what we call these, but the cell phone battery. You wouldn't let this happen to your phone. Don't let it happen to you either. Self-care is a priority, not a luxury. I find this to be a very interesting thing about the work that we all do in working in these intersecting fields within behavioral health and the other adjacent work that happens. We take care of ourselves last. We focus so much on helping people and, you know, working on making the system better and advocacy and all the different things that we do, that we'll often find ourselves really run down and just not taking care of ourselves. And I think something that helps sort of shift that is really thinking about this as a part of an ethical practice. So it isn't something that's an add-on or something we'll do if we can get to it. It's an ethical imperative for all helping professionals. And if we can start to shift inside of our places of work around that and really realizing the necessity of it, and not something that we'll get to if we can get to it, or we'll get to it after work, but really including it to be a part of every day, I think we'll start to see some shifts in just the quality of our overall wellness and well-being. And it's something that has to be accommodated from the top down. If leadership is modeling this, and if leadership is engaging in wellness activities and an overall wellness mindset in the workplace, that will, of course, make its way to the people that are working in every agency. So it really has to start from the top down. I work with a lot of people who take wellness very seriously. I travel to different offices as a part of my job, and I see how the leadership there and how coworkers are sort of supporting each other around workplace wellness as often as possible. Next slide. So we're talking about needing to make a pivot. Wellness means different things to different people. If you notice, it's been a little co-opted, wellness. It's an industry now. It's an expensive industry. It costs a lot of money for the ways that it's promoted, you know, in the mainstream. And it doesn't, not all things fit for all people. So just being sensitive to that as we're starting to, as you're thinking about ways that you can incorporate wellness in the workplace, Dr. Swarbrick's going to talk about that very well. Think about ways that you can be culturally sensitive and inclusive in developing whatever your practices are going to be around that. and also thinking about supporting workplace wellness that's trauma responsive as well. For me, there are some things that some folks consider to be self-care that I just can't do. My nervous system doesn't like it. It's not helpful to me. It's not soothing to me, and it's something that I can't do. So just being conscious that not every form of wellness works for everyone when you're looking to do things, in the workplace. And it also should be based on what employees tell you is helpful. So that's easy to find out. Just ask folks what is helpful, what is meaningful, what would be some things that we can incorporate around workplace wellness, and folks will tell you. Next slide. Next slide.
Sorry, Liz.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
Liz. Just
No, no.
having some technical difficulties.
got it.
here.
No worries. I can actually look at my own slides, and that's fine, and keep going. So the benefits of having workplace wellness: it increases health and wellness, manages chronic pain and fatigue, protects against secondary trauma and compassion fatigue, builds personal resiliency, increases use of exemplary leadership skills, enables us to see more clearly what needs to be done and how, and ultimately leads to happier, more connected, and more productive staff and leadership. So it's a win-win for everyone. Really crucial to that, though, is being able to create a culture that supports it. And first and foremost would be creating a warm, welcoming environment that prioritizes acceptance and safety around mental health concerns for all. That's something that we're working on within OMH as well, that warm, welcoming environment for everyone, creating a culture that prioritizes well-being, incorporating it into the existing workday, and working collaboratively with your HR departments and leadership. I have found our HR department to be incredibly supportive about workplace wellness and very interested in working with us. Next slide. Yep. So working collaboratively with your HR departments and leadership. And finally, next slide. There are some really low-cost ways. So these are some things that I have done in different places, but first and foremost, get up out of that chair. Stand up, maybe stretch a little bit, take a walk, just move your body in some way. I sit in meeting after meeting after meeting some days. So getting up out of that chair and just even walking in place goes a long way in helping with stiffness and pain, and just shifting my mindset so that I can refocus and give what I need to give in those meetings. Hold some staff meetings out in the sunshine. When the weather gets nicer, it's okay. Sit outside, breathe in the fresh air, get some of that vitamin D. Take that break. Try not to feel guilty about wanting a work-life balance. We all have a lot of work to do. The work will always be there. It's okay to want to prioritize that balance. And again, for leadership to model. There are some fun competitive things that people can do. I have done some of these in the workplace myself, have contests about how many steps people can walk in a day, have contests about water drinking and how much water people are able to drink, just finding ways to connect as a team and do things together. And then what else? Whatever else you find is important. So thank you for letting me sort of put my pitch in there on workplace wellness in this short amount of time, but it is a real distinct honor for me to introduce the keynote speaker, Dr. Peggy Swarbrick. Peggy and I work together at CSP in New Jersey, Collaborative Support Programs, and I really came to respect and be helped, quite honestly, by Peggy's insights and her expertise on all things wellness. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Dr. Swarbrick. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Peggy, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, Liz. It's just so great to see you too, and just to really see this amazing turnout today, that we're here to talk about this important topic of peer support, supervision, and just to see this event, 2 days of this, almost 300 people close to being on a Friday morning, is just an amazing testament to the value of the peer workforce and all of your commitment to this. So really excited to be here today and really talk a little bit about some of the experiences that I've had over many years to bring to you some ideas about, as Liz mentioned, in our workshop, we're going to really dive into a lot of the workplace wellness with my colleague, Victor Luna. We're going to highlight some things that we've had from our experience, and we're also going to do some brainstorming. So please join us there. But for the keynote today, I'm going to talk a little bit about, should I should I do my slides, or we'll move them along then? See how that goes. Okay, well, we can move it along then. To the next slide. Tools and techniques for effectively supervising peer support specialists. So if we, I think I can move it, or
Peggy,
no?
I think you should be able to move the slides. And so if you want to give it a try, and if not, I'll move it for you.
Okay, I'm trying, okay, let me see. Oh, okay, wait, is that, did I move it or? you?
Yes, that was you. All
That was
set.
me. Okay, great. So, let's see. Yeah, so today, what I'm going to talk a little bit about is tools and techniques for supervising in this piece of it. And then after, we're going to I'll set the stage for really looking at some of that support to promote that wellness, which is the thing. Myself, I'm from Rutgers University. I'm in the Graduate School of Applied and Professional Psychology, and I'm also the director of the Collaborative Support Programs of New Jersey Wellness Institute. And I've been with Collaborative Support Program, just for those of you not aware, I've been there for over 26 years now. It's a large peer-run organization. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is based on some of this 26-year experience, as well as some other experience I've had, and also just some, really basically some practices that we have worked on that have really helped people in this way. It's amazing to see the evolution. I remember when Rita was telling me about this PeerTAC. I just want to comment and give the organizers and the whole effort of this. I was like, wow, this is a big undertaking you guys are getting into, But to see this today, to see all you have, and to see almost over 300 people here is just amazing. So we've come a long way in this world of peer support supervision, but we definitely have a long way to go. And I think, again, as Liz brought up about, there's workplace needs for workforce. So we're moving forward into a new era of a lot more focus on the value of peer support specialists in all facets of work. But one of the things that I think that is so strong, which is part of this whole initiative, is the supervision that people are provided or are seeking and getting. So I'm going to really just go into some nuts and bolts to kind of ground us in, what is supervision and why is this important for peer recovery, peer support specialists, whatever the term we're using today. And what I want to do is just go into some definitions so we're really clear about what those things, and then provide you a strength-based supervision process and flow. Very simple. Try to make it nuts and bolts. I'm an occupational therapist by training, learning about strength. We use strength-based, but we also use techniques that are very concrete. And that's what I want to highlight, some major concrete steps. And then how would you use this if you're supervising someone or you're in that role? How do you work collaboratively to use this tool in a way? And so this is really what hopefully today I will highlight, and loved questions, and then also looking forward to those of you who come to the workshop later. So supervision, when we think about, sometimes I remember early in my work, I avoided the supervision because I was like, oh, what are they going to tell me I did wrong? What did I not do? Especially when you're new to a field, new to a work, you're thinking about okay, I got to go meet and find out all these things I'm going to do and get all this criticism or feedback. But that's not really what supervision is. Supervision, really, when we do it well, when we do it together, it's a real collaborative process for you if you're here today, and we're all in probably both roles. Many of you may be supervisors, but you're also a supervisee probably within the work that you do. So you're actually getting supervision and giving supervision. So we're already, many of us, having experience, but one of the things we want to think about is hopefully it's a collaborative process, and it's using strengths. It's building on the strengths, and that's also kind of linked strongly to what Liz talked about, building people's wellness. Our supervision and how we do it and how we're part of that can be a big part of our wellness, because it also helps get that growth, helps us to build our wellness physically, spiritually, socially, intellectually, occupationally, all the different dimensions. Supervision can promote our wellness. It promotes our growth. So it's a powerful component of workplace wellness. So we can really be doing a lot. So I want to highlight just kind of thinking about, terms when we think about it, so often it's like the person who regulates the performance or delegates the tasks. And that when we talk about the different functions of supervision, that's one of the functions, right? You're monitoring and regulating. And that's really where sort of the negative connotation sometimes comes about it, what supervision is. You have to verify the time worked, recommend, do things with hiring. Definitely big piece, which we want to talk about in the strength piece, is the potential for growth and promotion. Want to be thinking about that. I used to initially get a little worried about it. This person's going to get a higher job than me. And that's when I would say to myself later on, well, that's great if they're going to get a higher job than me and they're going to go on and realize their potential and get an even better job. That's like an amazing outcome for a supervisor. So we want to be thinking about that's a goal, is help people to do what they're going to do it well, but then grow. And then providing that feedback, which is really where sometimes also the challenges of understanding supervision, again, and/or the disciplinary action. These are pieces of the supervision that are part of it, but can be challenging. So thinking about it, doing that, and when I think about things, so the benefits of it, though, doing supervision, having supervision, it's going to support that practice and reflection. And that's one of the things, if you're doing supervision or you're receiving it, if you're not reflecting on what you're doing, not getting reflective feedback, not personally examining what you're doing and how you can enhance it and develop yourself more physically, spiritually, socially, and all the other dimensions, it's not happening well. I think that's one of the things we want to think about. We want to help reflective practice. How is this helping? What am I doing? How am I growing professionally? How am I improving my wellness, my well-being? It can really help. And the other benefit of supervision, especially if you're doing it effectively, it can affect that workplace wellness culture, right? It can affect the environment. If people are getting supervision, they're feeling supported, they're feeling like they're getting the tools and the techniques to do their job, it's going to help. And then patient or client consumer outcomes can be improved. So it has like a real win-win. And so to think about it in a way that you want to think about those pieces that you want to do, but from a strength-based perspective, where you think about the collaboration. And I encourage you to be thinking about, are you collaborative, or are you receiving supervision that's collaborative? What's the collaborative nature of it? And when I go into the structured approach that I'm going to share, think about that. How collaborative is it, that supervision you're receiving or the supervision you're giving? How much is it focusing, especially a lot of the time, on the strengths of the person? Because a lot of times it gets so focused on the day-to-day administrative tasks that are not being done, or sometimes people just even wait to supervision till the point where the person's not performing well, making it the habit of, even if it's just a week, whatever the frequency is, doing it on a regular basis. And that's one of the things we hear in our work, is that, does supervision happen? And a lot of times when I informally poll people, it doesn't happen at a regular pace. So that's one place to really just even start, making sure if you're in a peer support role that you're requesting it and receiving it. And if you're in the person of providing the peer support supervision or any kind of supervision, it's that you do it. So you want to think about that in your way. Also thinking about the assets of the person's unique abilities, the cultural awareness, cultural attunement, very important. And when we do strength-based supervision, it can really help build their competencies areas, and it empowers the person, really, really important. And this mirrors a lot of peer support work that we do. If you think about this, right? We empower people, we acknowledge, and we strengthen and help them to develop the competencies. So 3 principles you want to hopefully think about in terms of building on for strength-based supervision is being strength-focused. We're going to work on helping people improve areas, but building from strengths, focus on the growth, that the person has the potential, even if they're, you know, it seems like they're lacking in certain things right now, knowledge or skills or experience, build those growth experience. Connection, I'm going to talk about in a bit, and then keeping that balance. So we're really keeping to these kind of principles here, really focusing on those competencies and the potential of the person. Because I think early on in my life, in the different roles I have, like I was way underqualified for many of the jobs I had, in a sense, but having people around me who supported me and helped me to bolster myself, to develop the skills, develop the knowledge. And mostly for me was developing the confidence, because that negative self-talk was probably the biggest barrier that I have. That really was important from a supervisor. And then helping people in finding ways to further set goals for themselves and build themselves, getting involved in learning more skills, going back to school if that's what they choose, or going back and further enhancing their skills in certain areas. And then really one of the things, when I talk about the title of this presentation, which I forgot to mention at the beginning, this was called Tools and Techniques for Effectively Supervision. So I'm talking about some of these strength-based strategies, but a tool, the major tool that I feel that we don't even realize as a supervisor is you. If you are the supervisor, you are the tool, you are the conduit that's going to help make this positive, trusting, strong relationship that's safe, that helps with that connection. That is on us. And that's how we can develop that ourselves as a supervisor. How are we connecting? How are we building it? And that's it. It sounds simple, but it's so difficult and powerful to be thinking about it. That's why as a supervisor, particularly if you're someone who is supervising peer support specialists you don't have that training yourself, that's where you need to get your support, or helping the person to link to those resources to get that supervision around their peer support competencies, if that's not your strength, and creating that safe place to talk about things and learn from one another. Balancing, you have to balance all of the components, because again, that's the biggest piece that gets in the way in this kind of a model, is that we focus a lot. For administrative is important, but the other two, and also the other ones that we talk about in terms of the 5 functions, you have to balance all 5, right? But we need to not be totally focused on the administrative areas. You want to help people to do effective, efficient, ethical work and follow the rules and procedures of the agency, but we don't want to get too overly focused. We want to build that growth. So providing education, providing the support, doing the advocacy when we need to do the advocacy. So trying to think about the pieces of balancing that, because again, over focus on the administration. As we're going along, and it's the 5 functions of supervision and you can probably learn more about that. I'm seeing in the chat from Jonathan Edwards has mapped that out nicely, and I'm sure that there's more presentations and also resources on that in PeerTAC, so we can direct you to that. Great, and please put questions if I'm saying something people don't understand. Another piece with this reflective practice, which is an art, right? Reflective practice is an art that we help people with. And that's why as a supervisor, you have to be mindful of, like, we may have our reflective practice, and also people may not be familiar with it. So using the way of our communication to ask good questions, help people to be self-aware and self-assess themselves on a regular basis. And I'm going to talk about this in the process, where you can literally, basically, before we give feedback to people, right, you give them the opportunity to reflect on how they're doing. And that's a hard thing for us to sometimes do, because we want to just give the feedback. By being more, helping people to be reflective on what they're doing, because that's less threatening when we're giving feedback. And also helping people with the job. People get tons of this training that they they go out and they come out even after a peer support training, they've done all this training, but putting it into practice, that's really where the reflection comes in. That's where we have to help them build opportunities to continue to teach people the skills and knowledge that they have. And, using job descriptions to guide it, as well as helping people to go back to the competencies. And I really always refer back to the competencies that SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, has outlined. Those are good things and most trainings are following. So as a supervisor to peer support specialist, that's something you want to really know about and be able to kind of be able to help people with. So another piece with effective strength-based supervision will role model. You want to role model things. So that's another piece with you being a supervisor. You're going to modeling the ethical values. You're going to be modeling the skills. You're going to be teaching people. And that's one of the things that can be really powerful in doing supervision is role modeling for people. And then again, as talking back to the thing about role modeling, being supportive is one of the functions, supporting and creating a workplace wellness culture. You want to role model those things. That's also going to be very powerful in your role as a supervisor. So I want to give you I gave you a background around some strength-based supervision, and then I also a little bit gave you a definition, but I want to give you a visual to put it into context, really, that a lot of what I highlighted here that you could get. So you have the job description at the heart of this, right? So you want to help the person to do the work that's outlined. So you can see in the middle box, like there's a whole host of tasks and skills and knowledge, right? That's a big piece. That document is powerful. People overlook that document. And I find that it's so important of a tool. It's another tool and a technique, right? We're talking about tools and technique. Job description, work from the job description. And if you say, well, the job description doesn't match what they're doing, that's really where you're going to see the problems, because people put these job descriptions and then they're asking people to do all these other things and then there's a guessing game for people. And I've seen it really not go well when people are not clear about what they're supposed to do. And there's a real agreement with the supervisor and supervisee in what the person. So that's a really easy tool to find in a good place to start with people when you're engaged, when you're creating this collaborative relationship for supervision. So then your idea as a supervisor is you want to help make sure the person is competent, right? Are they competent to do the work? So as a peer support supervisor, support specialist supervisor, you want to know the competencies. That's why I referred back to either the competencies of the training they've had, or you can refer back to the great outline of the substance abuse and mental health competencies, and knowing what those are. And now where you're going to be at a very disadvantage if you haven't taken that training yourself is you want to be able to learn some of that or link the person to other resources, because you don't have to do it all. You may need to link to other peer supporters who are really good at that competency and maybe set up some opportunities for people to shadow one another or mentor one another. So that could be a piece of supervision, is helping them to develop the competencies through the peer support of working with another peer or someone else, or linking them to another agency that might do that well. And we see that a lot. At CSP, we provide that kind of support for people sometimes. Effectiveness is a big piece. The ethics, again, you're going to want to know what the ethical standards are and bring that up in some of the sessions with people. And then the efficiency. Now that comes up a lot in the idea of, the administrative things, but that's a big piece. And then the growth, and you see the growth is there, and that should be really a prime focus, again, in the balance of all these things. So I like this visual, hopefully it helps you out there. And so I want to tell you a little bit, I've given you some conceptual ideas, but one of the things I want to a lot of what I'm going to talk about in the next couple of minutes is what people have said from really getting feedback, because we do a lot of, like I said, done this for long years and whole staff and worked a lot with peer support supervisors. And some peer support specialists have said, what are some good, this is from some polling we did in some surveying of staff, that people said, they got respected. There was self-disclosure used. People were concrete. They were, I need to know what my job was, right? I had empathy, again, especially for sometimes when I'm dealing with some strategies, you know, things that are difficult, that they were available, the availability. So you have your time, and I would say, if it's one thing, schedule a regular time. And that doesn't always happen. It sounds so simple, but that's really where we find when I've come in and tried to help people, the problem was it didn't happen regularly, and it wasn't really clear when and how the peer support specialist would get that supervision. So having the availability, and then having the person do the supervision in a supportive way that's non-critical. So using reflection and doing it in a strength-based way. And the other things that they said was they had knowledge of it. They may not have had the training, but they had knowledge of learning, and then they also had clear goals, and they used the goals to guide how they work on many of the things, and the variety of skills, especially the feedback. And then one of the things people said in getting their feedback about the availability is that having it, just making it really. And so the said, we want them to meet with us. We want to have time to bring up my things, providing it, whether some people want it monthly, some people want it weekly. Monthly is really not enough more, and it probably doesn't follow many of the guidelines, but having it on a regular basis and being intentional with it. So setting it, doing it, following up, and finding ways beyond the time that's set aside for supervision to communicate and collaborate. So the availability is a big piece. The other piece they said is that respect, doing it in a way that really respects me, providing that encouragement and praise, even when I'm struggling, right? Acknowledge and the value I have. And that really, that could be so important. People thought that, and really find, ways to acknowledge things, that especially the flexibility sometimes that is needed in the work. So providing that respect and providing that support. And then the big one, again, promoting that growth we said before, is providing those opportunities, being able to be that role model, be supportive of the goals and passions that you have. People say that, people just feel like the supervisor did not look at that, do that sometimes. Building the confidence and inspiring, giving that regular constructive feedback and focusing it on the positive. That's why I've provided you this strength-based approach. This is the kind of feedback we got. And really, basically, they said a lot about having the clear understanding of the roles. And this is the biggest probably learning curve for those of you who are not peer supporters, who are moving into peer support roles. This is the one where you want to brush up or make the link, and then having more questions and making more opportunity to focus on that growth component of the visual that we have. So that's one thing that we wanted to highlight. And then the last one, before I want to get a couple of questions about you, to just go into some of the nuts and bolts before I start with some questions, is being able to be that role model, and to have be more role model, and have a structure in place, and having opportunities and benefit for people to, like they were saying that. So I want to just talk about, I'll see if I have questions before I move into, okay, here's the tools and techniques. You are a major tool. Here's the strength-based perspective on use of doing supervision. Any questions before I talk about some of the pieces around you as the supervisor being able to use yourself effectively? Any questions in the chat before I continue? I'm seeing a lot of good dialogue going in here. Any people have given some good feedback, right? Here. Yeah, there's some references to the 5 functions you can. People are talking about some resources are great that are being put into the chat.
Sorry, Peggy, I was trying to find my unmute button. So
okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
And we had a comment early on from Ira Weiss, who said, as a peer, you should be receiving supervision from a supervisor that understands your work.
Yeah. So you want me to comment on that, and then how that fits here?
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, you as a supervisee or, supervisor or supervisee, so you're receiving that supervision, and your supervisor, for example, is a nurse, right? Your supervisor is a nurse maybe, or whatever other role. And that person should really, okay, you have the job description. So that person should, first of all, let's start with the job description. That's where you can focus. Now, the nurse or whoever else the other role is, doesn't have peer support peer support competency training. So there needs to be they need to be coming to these kind of events. They need to be going to the PeerTAC resources. That's one thing. And if they're not, you can, as an advocate, say that, there's these training resources, these resources you can talk within your management. Hopefully there's management structure here. The management structure should be making sure that that nurse or whoever else that, professional role is, has the access to the tools and techniques to be able to supervise you. Now, they don't have that training, and it would be great if they did, and that would be one of the goals we can strive to, is that people, but then there should be a training they should go to that would provide them. There's great training on APS, I believe, and other places. So those are some of the things I'd say. So, it's not that they don't, it's not like you can't do the supervisor, but you have to, as the supervisor, need to get access to some skills and competencies. And then the other thing I strongly suggest in that situation is, okay, I'm the nurse or I'm the OT. I am an occupational therapist by training, but if I was the OT in my only OT role, I would then be linking, okay, Joe or Victor needs to go hook up with Lisa over here, and Lisa does a good job at peer support. I'm going to have Victor go shadow Lisa more in the setting, because Lisa is more competent than me as the supervisor. Victor needs to learn some outreach skills or resource development skills. So you try to create those opportunities, within your agency, or you can find a local agency that has peers. I know some places that would be some strategies as a tools and techniques that you could be suggesting to your supervisor, or from a leadership role. That would be some things I could think that could potentially help that situation.
Thanks, Peggy. And one
Yeah.
other I'll just point out is that Kathy Kent mentioned that encouraging youth peer advocates to develop their job description if it doesn't align with their code of ethics. And so that's a big thing about making sure that the job description actually aligns with the values in addition to what the organization needs are.
Yeah. And job description, that's why I put that at the front and center of that visual. Go to that visual and the job description. And if it's changed, it needs to be changed, and you need to it literally gets you on the same page, right? And you can say that respectfully. It's going to get us on the same page. Let's update it, and let's use that as the tool, because that's that is a major tool to use for helping people to get on the same page and things. So, that's one thing I would just encourage, you think about. But great questions, and, and great feedback, because these are about, addressing drift. That's another piece, because that's where I think, thank you very much, Jean. I feel drift, in my observation, comes from not having the supervision and the support of people who can help you in that way and who are confident to do that. So that's one of the things that why we have this PeerTAC, is because we don't want drift. I think that's the existence here of all of this training today and the resources that are going to be available, and hopefully a lot of the follow-up that happens. The drift is boils down to supervision in some ways, other factors as well, organizational leadership around that. And I think that's, as a peer supporter specialist or as a supervisor in it, we have a role in helping with that drift. And if we have our leadership and our management's putting pressure that's causing the drift, we then need to speak up, right? We need to speak up. We need to, that's where we go into our advocacy role as a supervisor, or advocacy role in our peer support. And I think that's something together to think about, but great question. Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to, and then please just stop me as I go along with things I'm saying that more clarification, and people are putting amazing resources to share. So again, tools, techniques, using the job description, using the structured approach, a strength-based approach. We all know strength-based approach, but it's applying it in this context. But what I think is important to think about as you're a tool and a part of the definition of the supervision that I gave you is the connection and the collaboration, because that's where sometimes it breaks down. So in the chat, I'd like to hear, just to see where you guys are at. Where are, when we think about the, connection and collaboration, right? When do you know you're connecting? Again, think about it in the context of your supervision, you're a supervisor, supervisees. When do you know you're connecting? And what do you do to build trust in a supportive connection? And this could be whether you're sitting from the peer, you're a supervisor or supervisee. How do you know it? And what do you do? How you know you're connecting, and what do you do to build that trust and connection? So let's see that in the chat. Love to hear all the different ways you're connecting, or you feel you're connecting with your supervisor or your supervisee. The conversation, they're listening, you're both on the same page, understanding of one another. Great. What do you know? So the flow, there's a proactive contributing in the conversation. There could be some body language and responses. There's using those good active, all of our communication skills. Excellent. You're checking in, sharing, feedback, reflective, active conversation, comfort in that trust, having the comfort. Listening. Great things here. Going the respect, healthy boundaries, open discussing how they're feeling. So that support, there's a lot of, myself, Amy, and I do a lot of these trainings, and there was one time we were doing a training and people go, well, we have the time for the smushiness, right? Like we can talk about the feelings and the smushy stuff in the things. And that's when you feel comfortable enough to have that. So yeah, look at these great connections, reach out outside of the time, right? It doesn't only have to be that time when there's like these connecting, these little check-ins, right? You can build up, bring things up. I love all this feedback. Keep coming in, not afraid to be honest, right? You're honest. You're able to feel like you can be genuine and transparent. Excellent. So be thinking, love all these having fun, right? Yeah, the huddles, Helen. I love that. Again, you don't always, supervision can come in these little snippets of things, right? And the connections in between just that formal time is important. Even between, I think that's an important sign when people are not just waiting till that time. So, and the open door policy and coming in. So just think about those characteristics of what people have said, and that what's important for you, space to be yourself. That's like one thing to be thinking about and be observing as you're on the supervisor role or the supervisee. And if you're having challenges in that, that's really where you want to have the open, transparent discussion with one another to create that space, because you want to know what do you do to create that collaborative partnership? I really think I encourage you to think about this, and you'll all get the PowerPoints here. Think about making it the collaboration, creating that collaboration, and thinking about, some of the things you heard from people said. What are you doing? And, how are you doing this? And keep thinking about how you can build that and keep that commitment that it's a commitment to us. We're working together, we're collaborating, we're communicating. And so we're doing things in a way that's really helping one another to work together. And you want to think ways about that relationship, your connection, because that's the biggest piece. You can help that growth and that connection. And it's a lot of what you all said here is what people said, what this is what you do, right? To have that connections. You encourage people, you have them, you use respectful language, and you use all that active listening skills, you acknowledge, right? And these are things all you have said here in many of these, and these are good ways and values and ideas to think about guiding your work as a supervisor. You also want to be thinking about how you are clear and specific in what you're doing, your expectations and such, right? Another piece in terms of just, you know, what you do, think about what you do to demonstrate that interest and respect. You know, that's another thing. You could be doing some self-reflection, or what do you feel if you're on the other side of it? What do you feel your supervisor does? Be mindful of that. And if you're not doing something that's demonstrating that respect, think about asking the person or having a collaboration, or if you're in the supervisor role, you can actually be requesting that, getting that comfort to do that, right? Thinking about that self-reflection. So again, many of you highlighted this, using good communication skills. Remember, one of the things we find, again, in the structure that I'm going to highlight for here in this approach, is being able to problem solve rather than offer advice, because that's one of the things we find in terms of defeats self-reflection and building the person to develop the skills and knowledge themselves, is to guide the problem solving collaboratively, then offering advice and work together. That you know, again, I talked about it, you might need to not be that person who can help them develop all the knowledge and skills and help them to link to those resources when that's when it's a point of where you don't have that ability or don't have that skill, linking them. One of the things I want to highlight here is that you really do, this is a big one that's really could be difficult for some people depending on their training, but it's not impossible. Developing that self-disclosure, you know, this is a tool that we as a peer support specialist use. It's a skill that many people who are supervising us don't know what it means, but we want to use that and use the self-disclosure ourselves as a supervisor. So you want to use it as a tool and a technique. So maybe go to a training on using your narrative. That's a lot of peer support training. That's a training. So that's a tool and a technique that the peer support supervisor, if you're not trained, need to go to that I think there's even an APS module on that. Go to that module, because you're going to, first of all, learn what the peer support specialist has learned how to use themselves. And then you're going to hopefully be able to use it more effectively in your relationship, in your supervision with the person you're supervising. And it's really powerful. It creates the we, because there's not a hierarchy in supervision. It's a we, going back to the previous slide. And then also, it's just really being a good listener is so important. So really be very mindful of that in these other resources we're highlighting here. Requesting input before you give feedback. I'm going to show this in a grid too in a few minutes. Just really ask people, how's it going? Explore the self-assessment before providing any of the feedback. And then as you are providing the feedback, give it in concrete, observable things that are relevant to the job description, right? Relevant to that job description. So be mindful of that. That's a big piece of, and it's always in terms of the flow. I'm going to talk about this flow. It's not like linear per se, but I want to try to maximize and visually some things that I've highlighted that will help you. So I've talked a little bit about the definitions. We've talked a little bit about this collaborative process. We've talked about some of the things that are so important on the supervisor, supervisee roles. I want to show you again a process, and you can develop any structure or process, but you as a supervisor, you as a supervisee, the session should follow a process. It shouldn't be, it should have like a time, whether it's a half an hour, whatever the time is, and the time should be divided into a purpose and a flow. And one of the things I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to go a little ahead about a little bit here, because I want to just be here, keep it to time. Here's a flow that I suggest highly, is orienting each other, going back to the purpose each session, reminding each other of what we're doing, why we're here, what's our agenda for the day, a reorienting of the purpose and of our supervision that we've agreed to. So you have an orienting, it takes 2 or 3 minutes. You may need to spend the first or second time hashing it out, so you each can orient each other to what you believe the purpose and outcome of supervision, so you're on the same page. You orient, and each time orient. Have an agenda for the session. And one of the things we strongly highlight in this flow is you co-create the agenda. So the supervisee, if you come, say, here are the 2 or 3 things I want to talk about. The supervisor says, here's the one thing. You've created agenda and have that, whether it's sent to each other an email ahead of time, or you have it somewhat. You want to map that out, because if you have nothing and you're coming and waiting for the person to tell you what to do, you're not going to feel empowered. You're going to feel overwhelmed. But being prepared for supervision is a big piece, and having an agenda is so, so important. Then, using some of the time to think about, some of the administrative, some of the supportive, some of the other aspects of the 5 functions that will come along in terms of what might be on that agenda. There might be administrative things. There might be some reflective practices around performance, how you're doing. And again, using that flow that I mentioned previously as a supervisor, asking the person to reflect on how they're feeling they're doing, but spend some time to reflect on that. Even if it's continuing to go well, acknowledge that. That was the feedback I showed you previously. People want a reminder of the acknowledgement of what they're doing well, so that can build the strengths, right? And then we can, you want to be able to share, again, here's the agenda. You might have to negotiate it if it turns out that, for example, you have half an hour and there's 10 things, you're not going to be able. So at the beginning, you have to kind of narrow it down to what's doable. Reviewing those performance, how's it going? Use praise, polish praise. I have that in a previous slide, but just that, using that, starting off with the strengths, giving some constructive feedback, spending some time to really review the performance and really relate it to areas like, what do you need support with? What do you need assistance with? So you reviewing that performance, spending some time requesting, asking the evaluation of the session, right? After, how did it go? How can our next session be better? So spending some time to even get feedback and evaluating, how is it going? How's my as a supervisor, being humble enough to ask that, so you can adjust your style, so you can readjust understanding to best meet the supervisee's needs, and then spend some time to evaluate. In terms of summarizing is really important, whether it's in writing in some ways, really important. Having notes, taking just notes, whether you're you can take turns doing the note taking, but really having the written bullet points for the next time, that's going to guide your next agenda. But really, and you probably have to do this anyway for many regulations, so it really helps in that way, right? So this is just a flow that I'm highlighting for you. And then, decide on who will draft and send it, summarize it, and put those actions into place. It really, this is one of the things we have found that people have found really, really important and helpful. And I'm going to give you, and again, a tool. I'm trying to give tools. You can change this up. Amy and I have developed this. We've used it. We've trained lots of people on it. It really works well. People tweak it in their own way, but this is just a flow of that visual I said I mapped out here, so with some more details, but this could be like a checklist that you can all use or adapt and adjust to your own needs, that can really make or break people's success in making sure supervision happens, making sure we're both on the same page, and really, really helps. So definitely, really very much important to kind of think about these things in terms of it. How many people feel like they feel like they have a checklist already, or they have something like this would work for them? I'd love to see in the chat if something that like this you use already, or you want to share. Even maybe you could even share with each other tools you use to help guide the supervision process for those. I think some people are putting some things in the chat. Rita, anything here we want to highlight? Yeah, the good things.
They're responding very positively to the checklist. It's great. Use a system like this, but feedback is awesome idea. Love your suggested flow. This is awesome. They're really giving high praise for the checklist.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Okay, and use it, tweak it, but it's worked. We have used this and it just like helps. It's a tool. That's what the whole training's about, a tool and a technique. You are the tool. These are some techniques, and this is just a checklist, just work well, and then just like here's a little visual of what I highlighted before, you orient, just kind of give you a little bit of start here, how to, start with the agenda, start out, negotiate that agenda, the goal of the session, make sure it fits into the timeline within terms of the performance, focus on that success first, right? Getting that feedback, asking, sharing that praise, polish, praise with each other giving each other praise, polish, praise, seeing how the session was today, because people could be pissed as hell at you when they leave that session and they're carrying that pissedness. I've been there, but evaluate it today and okay, yeah, let's see, I really didn't like that you said that, because again, I'm always going to focus on the polish, right? I've heard the praise, but I'm going to focus on the polish and I'm going to get overwhelmed. Process that and help the person to kind of, not go away with just focusing on the polish, right? Might be difficult to do that but make sure the session was a productive session for everyone, and then start to really have those next steps, send them out. It doesn't have to be a long narrative, a 2 or 3 page. It can be very much bullets, and then summarizing it and getting it, because literally you're on the same page. I have one more simple tool. I didn't want to overwhelm with you more tools, but I have one more tool that I think is helpful and about in terms of a supervisor. You're all, you're here. Those of you who are here as a supervisor, when we do training, we do a lot of training on it. We have the supervisor develop their own supervisor development plan around peer support specialist supervision. So this is like any kind of a plan, might even look like a treatment plan in some ways, but as you're here at this training today or last week or both days, develop your own. I take this tool away. We'll make this available. What's your strength as a supervisor, right? Like, what do you want to strengthen based on what you learned through the last 2 days or 1 day today? Like, this will be a great opportunity to put into practice what you learned here on these virtual sessions. And think about setting up a goal for yourself and a plan for yourself in the next month, what you could start to do. And I would encourage you to take some time, even if it's half an hour or whatever, when you're processing your notes in the next couple of days after these sessions, is what do you like, reflect on what you learned either here or the next couple sessions you went or last week, and create your own supervisor development plan. And that's going to be a nice tool. And that's one of the things that we do, particularly when we do training for non-peer support specialists, but also people who are not peer support specialists. We have them develop their own development plan, because you as a supervisor need supervision. And this is a good way to practice what you're probably helping your peer support specialists in their development plan. So that's just something we wanted to share as another tool. And then I want to give time for questions, here. So again, I learned, what we did today, but maybe we'll take the slides down and have questions. I wanted to make sure enough time. We talked about the benefits, have the structured approach, got the idea about getting the purpose and process on the same page. It gave you some tools to help people to do their job well and help for their growth. So I covered a lot, but I want to just give opportunity to have questions and comments or additional resources. Maybe we can take down the slides and have people offer questions.
I know Alicia mentioned earlier in the chat that she allows, or they allow the supervisees to set the agenda, to go through their part of the agenda before going into the combined agenda. So I think that's important, is to make sure that they have their say first. That sounded like really good practice.
Excellent. Others, maybe we'll take down we can just see if there's questions, or even moving into questions or feedback on anything or clarifications, because I fire hosed you with tons of information, tons of tools, tons of resources, and I want to make sure people have an opportunity to have a question or observation.
So if you slide to go to the last few slides Peggy, then I'll ask Brittany to go ahead and bring down.
Okay.
And Peggy, while you're doing that, there is a question that came in to the chat that just says, what is the realistic number of supervisees per supervisor in peer work? What may be too many people? So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, I mean, how do I take this? Should I do this slide down? Take this thing down? Okay, I'm not sure if I am able to do that or not. Well, that, it depends. I think I'll have to go back and look at the top of my head. I don't have a good, I think you have to come up with a formula. Depends on what the supervisor's other duties are, right? So it depends on how much time is allocated for that person's supervision of people, right? So, and again, their role. And so if they're just like a supervisor of a whole bunch of a team, I believe I was working with one program not too long ago where the people who were in the supervisors, I think they have some other title, maybe program something or other, but they were the supervisor, and they were supervising in that program, probably 15 people in total, and maybe 12 of the 15 were peer support specialists, and that was manageable. And I think, no, it was 20 peer support specialists they had, I believe. And then they had a few other people they were supervising, and that seemed to be manageable. Now, that was a big part of their role, right? That was their big part of their role. And one of the things they did too is one of the things you can do also in another training is, you do your supervision, you have your time, you have to figure out what frequency. If your agency is saying like certain amount of time each week, a half an hour or whatever, you have to just figure out, can it manage in that person's, that you don't want to have that person be overwhelmed, right? So, but they were able to do that, and it seemed to work well. Now, you can do things in group supervision too, right? Sometimes you can structure when you have large teams like that, but if the person doesn't have a lot of, so it's a lot of different factors. It's hard for me to answer that off the top of my head, but maybe we can get back, and that might be a thing for PeerTAC, to us look at across what are people seeing as good formulas for that. But that's a great question. You want to make sure that person can do this work in their day, right? The supervisor.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. There are a couple other questions. So we have a couple moments, so I'll ask them. What is the best strategy for a supervisor who themselves does not get supervision? So they're struggling with getting supervision themselves. So any thoughts and strategies to assist with that?
Yeah, very common. So it's either kind of seeing who your supervisor or your line of, and making the request, reaching out, if that, and to find out if you're, and speaking up and advocating for yourself as much, if that's like a little challenging and stuff. What I did, because I've had this happen to me many times in my career, was I sought out other people sometimes during those times, right? Like when I didn't have that supervisor that I felt or whatever, or it was like I sought out peers or other people. So you could always, and that's another strategy, but you eventually want to get the supervision in place in your agency, especially around administrative things. So I would say, if, maybe making the effort to kind of talk to your on paper supervisor, whoever's in the table of organizational structure. And then, because sometimes they, for whatever reason, but they might be linking you to someone else to supervise you, and or them knowing that might even just be something that they're not even aware, right? And it's very common. We have heard this all across, that supervision just does not happen in the field a lot. Yeah, and if some people are saying you have to be the one to educate your supervisor on peer work, and that's why it's a we thing. You have a lot of knowledge to share with them, so you are educating them. Yes, see, that's very important, and that's going to happen. And then you could link them to other resources to learn more about the competencies. as an OT, as an occupational therapist, which I did many years in my career, I was supervised by other professionals, particularly nurses and things like that. I used to not like that too much, but I worked with it. And then for me, what I did sometimes was I was like a conference. I don't like to use where I'm trying to use some good words. I was a conference enthusiast. Let's just put it that enthusiastic about conferences. I went to every single OT conference, every OT and mental health resource I could go to, and I networked myself. In that, and then in the peer world, the same thing I did. So sometimes you're getting sort of your reach out to peers can help you sometimes, then get the confidence, or sometimes get the boost that you need.
Thank you, Peggy. And we need to wrap up because we're going to be getting ready to go to the next session. But again, I'm Rita Cronice and co-director for PeerTAC. And Peggy, there's so much that I would love to say because we've been working together on various things for quite a while now. And Peggy actually is also my mentor through Rutgers. So thank you, Peggy, very much for a very practical, informative, very well received presentation. There's a lot of people who really got a lot, particularly out of the process flow and checklist that you provided. So we also want to thank our sponsors at OMH, particularly the Office of Advocacy and Peer Support Services, our partners with the Alliance for Rights and Recovery, who have been hosting this platform, and our partners, of course, and tech support staff through both the Alliance and through McSilver Institute. Just a reminder, in order to earn continuing education for the participation in this keynote, you will be getting by email a workshop evaluation that you need to complete within 48 hours of receiving it. Not necessarily 48 hours of this session, but you should be getting it shortly. So within 48 hours, complete that conference evaluation. You'll need to do that for continuing education. But even if you're not seeking continuing education, we really encourage you to fill out the workshop evaluation just so we get feedback for future sessions that we'll be holding. And of course, please provide feedback to Peggy. She did a wonderful job, and a lot of you gave feedback in the chat. Any of you that didn't have a chance to do that there can do it through the workshop evaluation. This keynote is worth one CE or 1 hour of continuing education. And to access your next session, you'll go to your workshop, or you go to the conference program, look for the workshop you want to attend. There's a link next to it that says join, and that's how you'll get to the next session. So thank you again for your participation in this inaugural, hopefully the first of many PeerTAC Supervision Summits, and we hope to see you again next year. Thank you. Well, actually.